Hello everyone, Dr. Polaris here. As we discussed in a recent video, the earliest known relatives of primates were the Adapiforms, a possibly unnatural grade of arboreal mammals that first appear in the fossil record just over 100,000 years after the KPG extinction event at the beginning of the Paleocene. It's currently debated as to whether these animals should be classified as true primates or as a more basal sister group, perhaps closer to the colugos of Dermoptera. Although they somewhat resembled primates in outward appearance, as well as in their adaptations for a tree-dwelling lifestyle and the structure of their teeth, Adapiforms lacked some key primate traits, such as fully enclosed orbits, with many species still possessing claws rather than flat fingernails. Crown group primates turn up in the fossil record roughly 10 million years later than the Adapiforms, around the time of the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. These can be defined by their possession of the aforementioned enclosed orbits, fingernails instead of claws, opposable thumbs in most species, and an improved sense of colour vision, which is quite unusual among placental mammals. Like other members of Euarchontoglires, it is thought that ancestral primates first evolved on the northern continents, presumably from Adapiform-like ancestors, before later spreading southwards into Africa, which would prove to be a major evolutionary hub for the group. Exactly when these animals diverged is unclear. Molecular studies tend to indicate that primates as a whole originated during the late Cretaceous, although the common ancestors of the two major living clades, the Strepsirrhines and the Haplorhines, may have lived circa 63 million years ago. This video will be focusing on the evolution of just one of these, the Strepsirrhines. Once referred to as the lesser primates, this is a very unfair and inaccurate description, as these animals are in no way inferior to the so-called higher primates, and have a long and successful history in their own right. Modern Strepsirrhines include the famous Lemurs of Madagascar, who like to move it, as well as the nocturnal Lorisoids, which encompasses the galagos, potos, and lorises. While lemurs are endemic to Madagascar, lorisoids can be found across mainland Africa, as well as South and Southeast Asia. All of these disparate animals share a suite of anatomical traits, most notably including a moist rhinarium at the tip of the snout, similar to that of dogs and cats, proportionally smaller brains than their haplorhine cousins, relatively large olfactory lobes, the ability to produce their own vitamin C internally, and a specialised tooth comb formed of the front lower incisors that is utilised for grooming. Their eyes contain a reflective layer to improve their night vision, and their eye sockets include a ring of bone around the eye, but they lack a wall of thin bone behind it. The common ancestor of all living strepsirrhines originated on the African mainland, probably during the early Eocene, not long after these primates first arrived on the continent from Eurasia. It is currently uncertain what the Eurasian ancestors of lemurs and lorisoids may have been, due to the paucity of the fossil record, although there are plenty of candidates, as strepsirrhines were once highly diverse on the northern continents during the hothouse conditions of the Eocene. The most basal strepsirrhines are generally acknowledged to be the possibly dubious clade of Adapiforms, which first appear in Eurasia and North America roughly 56 million years ago. Up to 5 different families have been identified, although the interrelationships of these is poorly understood. The Adapids are perhaps the best known of these, and generally would have resembled modern lemurs and lorises in appearance, although they lacked several typical traits of these animals, including a tooth comb and a grooming toilet claw on the second pedal digit. One subfamily of these, the Adapinae, were mostly native to the European archipelago for almost the entirety of the Eocene. The type genus Adapis was a successful primate, producing 5 species and existing for about 8 million years during the late Eocene. Possessing a narrow snout, relatively small eyes, and a physique well suited for slow, deliberate climbing that was similar to lorises and potos, Adapis was a diurnal folivore with powerful jaw muscles for chewing plant matter. While the average body weight of Adapis is estimated to be about 2 kilograms or 4.4 pounds, the genus is represented by an extremely wide range of body sizes across the different species, compared to other Adapiform genera. For example, the largest species, A. magnus, had an estimated body mass of 8.4 to 9 kilograms, or up to 19 pounds, which is comparable to the Indri, among the heaviest of all modern lemurs. Another subfamily, Cenopithecinae, was also native to Europe, but managed to reach North Africa as well. By far the most famous of these is the incredibly well-preserved genus Darwinius from the Messel shale of southern Germany, represented by a complete holotype consisting of the remains of a subadult female, informally known as Ida. This genus was initially thought to represent a so-called missing link between basal and derived primates, including humans, being greeted with a great deal of media fanfare. However, later studies found that Darwinius was an adapid, far closer to modern lemurs than to haplorhines. Based on the holotype, this genus would have reached about 622 to 642 grams, or up to 22 ounces as an adult, and was largely folivorous, feeding on leaves and seeds in a tropical lakeside forested environment. It was closely related to the notably larger Afradapis from the late Eocene of Egypt, which is probably a fairly slow-moving folivore that could reach 3 kilograms in weight. Adapids as a whole died out at the end of the Eocene, probably as a result of the cooling and drying climatic conditions of the time, reducing suitable closed forest habitats. Another successful family of Adapiforms were the Notharctids, which were mostly native to North America and Europe. The oldest known forms, such as Asiadapis from the early Eocene of India, were tiny insectivores or omnivores that were similar in size and probably appearance to the living mouse lemurs of Madagascar. Other subfamilies were substantially larger than this, such as the Notharctines, with early Eocene forms such as the very widespread genus Cantius being agile climbers and leapers weighing about a kilogram. More derived forms were bigger and bulkier, possessing small orbits and relatively short blunt snouts, indicating that they were diurnal folivores. The long-tailed North American Smilodectes was about the size of a large domestic cat, and is known from fairly complete remains, showing that it was an adaptable vertical clinger and leaper. The type genus Notharctus was similar, being among the most lemur-like of the Adapiforms, although these similarities were the result of convergent evolution. Like their adapid cousins, the Notharctids died out at the end of the Eocene. However, some Adapiforms did survive the end Eocene extinction event, such as the genus Ecmoweshashala, the last primate native to the United States before the arrival of Homo sapiens during the late Pleistocene. With a name meaning little cat man in the Sioux language, this omnivorous animal probably fed mostly on fruit and seeds in the warm forests of the Rocky Mountains during the early Oligocene. It died out by around 26 million years ago, almost certainly due to habitat loss caused by a continually cooling and drying climate. Meanwhile, in Eurasia, a family known as the Cephalodapids persisted in what is now India and Pakistan until the late Miocene, when they went into decline following the aridification of the region and potentially the arrival of the leaf-eating colobine monkeys, which competed with these diurnal lemur-like primates for food. Two groups of strepsirrhines that were native to North Africa during the early Eocene, the Azebeids and the Lemurids, seem to have been basal relatives of modern lemurs and lorisoids. Both groups were small and probably resembled mouse lemurs or galagos, with the Azebeids being more specialised, feeding on sap, nectar and fruit, while the Lemurids were generalised insectivores. The common ancestors of the lemurs and lorisoids probably diverged around 50 million years ago based on genetic testing, perhaps slightly earlier, although the oldest known fossils of the crown group strepsirrhines, complete with the distinctive tooth comb, hail from Egypt and date to circa 40 million years ago. These were 3 genera of basal lorisoids, which means that the lemurs must have already split off on mainland Africa by this time as well, although fossil remains of them are so far unknown. The modern members of Lorisoidea began to diverge during the late Eocene, with this group containing the galagos, lorises, potos and anguantibos. These are all nocturnal, slender omnivorous primates, with the galagos or bush babies being the most basal. There are 6 genera of these cute, modestly sized animals, which are found across forested regions of sub-Saharan Africa. Galagos have large eyes, giving them good night vision, in addition to other characteristics like strong hind limbs, acute hearing, and long tails that help them balance. Their ears are bat-like and allow them to track insects in the dark. They catch insects on the ground or snatch them out of the air, with their hind legs well adapted for leaping. In addition to insects, galagos will also feed on fruit, tree gum, bird eggs, and small vertebrates. Related females form social groups with their young, keeping in contact in the dark with their loud, shrill vocalizations, while the adult males are generally solitary and maintain their own territories. Their sister group, the Lorisids, also first split off in Africa during the late Eocene. Weighing between 300 grams and 2 kilograms, these animals often look like cute little gremlins, which unfortunately makes them popular targets of the illegal pet trade. With very large reflective eyes, woolly fur, and short to non-existent tails, these nocturnal and often solitary primates have slow creeping movements, and are often very quiet in order to avoid predators. The potos and anwantibos are still native to sub-Saharan Africa, with the former present across equatorial tropical forests, where they live largely solitary lives. Also known as softlies in English-speaking regions, potos possess several distinctive traits, including vestigial index fingers, powerful jaws adapted for chewing hard tree gum, and strong reinforced neck vertebrae that can be used to defend themselves from predators. Their close relatives, the anwantibos, resemble yellowish golden teddy bears and are native only to western equatorial Africa, where they feed mostly on insects, especially caterpillars, which are captured with a lightning-fast grab following a slow methodical stalk. During the second half of the Miocene, the ancestors of the living Lorises migrated out of Africa and into Eurasia, where they still live today. 3 genera can be found across Asia, dwelling in the tropical forests of India, Sri Lanka, and parts of Southeast Asia. Like their African cousins, these cute primates are slow, deliberate climbers with large forward-facing eyes, possessing omnivorous diets that include insects, fruit, gum, leaves, and slugs. Despite their gentle appearance, lorises can defend themselves with their surprisingly powerful jaws and sharp canines, with the slow lorises of the genus Nycticebus technically being venomous, possessing a toxic bite obtained by licking a sweat gland on their arms, and the secretion is activated by mixing with saliva. Their toxic bite, once thought to be primarily a deterrent to predators, has been discovered to be primarily used in disputes within the species. Meanwhile, the evolution of the lemurs is poorly understood. It was long thought that these animals evolved on Madagascar, and then radiated wildly after their ancestors migrated there early in the Cenozoic, perhaps as long as 60 million years ago. However, recent studies have complicated this view. The early Miocene genus Propoto, known from a partial lower jaw recovered from the Hiwegi Formation of Kenya, and formerly classified as a fruit bat, has been found to be an early relative of the living Ai. Like that very distinctive-looking primate, Propoto possessed enlarged forward-pointing incisors that were utilised for digging wood-boring insects out of tree bark. It has also been recognised that the late Eocene Plesiopithecus from Egypt may have also been a relative of the Ai, as its skull shows many similar traits, including large eyes, a high muzzle, and wood-chiselling incisors. If this is true, then it suggests that the precursor of all Malagasy strepsirrhines evolved in Africa at least 40 million years ago, with the proto-Ai's and the common ancestor of all other lemurs arriving in Madagascar separately during the early Miocene. This would also coincide with the estimated arrival times for the endemic Malagasy rodents, carnivorans, and tenrecs. The Cenozoic fossil record on Madagascar being almost non-existent before the Holocene doesn't help matters, and we currently lack any remains attributable to non-Ai related lemurs from Africa, making their origins quite mysterious. As I've already made a whole video concerning the modern Malagasy lemurs, as well as the large extinct forms, I won't cover them again here. However, it is an interesting thought that these iconic animals did not first evolve on Madagascar, and may have arrived there much later than traditionally thought in 2 separate waves, perhaps as recently as 20 million years ago. Thanks for watching, everyone. The next episode will be covering the Mammaliaforms, those synaptids from the late Triassic onwards that were as close to mammals as it's possible to be without actually being mammals proper. See you again soon. Cheerio.